Oh, hi there. How are you?
Good.
Good. Nice to see you.
So what is this building?
Yeah, that's the Modelhof. It's the building has so many purposes. It's people can meet here. We can make concerts, seminars, and you see it maybe very well in this Solomonic key. You see it symbolizes two people actually meeting like we just did, and then they obviously meet, they touch each other, and then they have an impact on each other, and you see this impact in this very funny, so different looking geometrical figures, but they are all consisting of these two triangles, of these two human beings, and then here they have a completely different perspective to each other than they had here. So they are completely transformed, and here they separate and continue their individual journey. So I think this is really what the Modelhof is about. Here people meet and they should change each other.
Shall we go through?
Yeah. So your question was?
Was how can we get people to use their heart and their mind together, regardless of whatever the people say?
Well, I think the first element is not to react the same way as people who are full of fear are reacting. You know, as I was trying to so to speak act. Government, you must do something. So they are always in this pressure making mood, and this is indeed very powerful. You must do something. It's urgent and it's important. It's about life and death. So that's the spirit. How the spirit is acting. So in a way, they are not with themselves, but they are out of themselves. So what is then speaking? That's the fear spirit who is speaking. So it's not them, but the fear spirit. Now, media obviously is pushing on this element because it might sell more. They might sell more. So that's the bad news. Now, I'm more, let's say, worried or researching the question, how do you answer to fearful statements? Now, for example, you have a COVID task force, and all these people are talking like this with this COVID task force, and this is the real virus. The virus is not COVID, but the virus is the fear who is really giving on to other people. And I think we all have made this experience. I had this experience. Somebody comes, and then you are also, suddenly you are worried. And then what's going on? And then your blood pressure is increasing. So that's a phenomenon. Now, the bad news in the COVID context is that you actually reduce your resistance power to the virus with fear. And that's amazing to observe. So it's against all rational thinking. Yeah. So now, what do we do is, of course, your second question. And
Could we walk around the top?
Yeah, we could actually,
the light would be better.
And then see the library also.
Yeah.
So if you have no self-confidence concerning your body and your health status, then you have fear. And we all know that. If you are not self-confident to in this interview, I fear what I might say, and my whole body language would express my fear, and so on. And of course I try not to be, because fear was never a good consultant. That's an old wisdom anyway. So
Yeah.
there's no new invention in there. So when you are confident that you have a good food, you are having fair movement, you exercise, you do not do too much drinking alcohol and smoking, then you feel fairly confident that you have a good and strong immune system. So you will be not so fast accepting all these fearful messages in the media and so on. Fear, is not caring too much about weeks and months of investment. Fear is here and now. And that's how people behave. That's why they are so upset, and then there is this sense of urgency all the time, and the sense of urgency really is not caring for a health plan, an individual health plan to lose weight and all this blah blah blah. They are caring for immediate measures to prevent death. So obviously high time preference is not really helping evolving the development culture and so on, because there is always hard work behind it. So to learn music and painting and singing, there is a year of almost a lifetime's program behind it, and it's no coincidence that at the moment the culture people are absolutely bankrupt. They don't have any chance to perform. So this, you could say, is an attack to cultural life, indeed.
Yeah.
If it's on purpose, I don't know. I can hardly believe. The awareness is really the main purpose, in consciousness awareness. That's about it. So yes, it is wake-up call. And how can you wake up? I think a simple method is to observe yourself. Now, if you have a fearful reaction, it's not you, it's something else. If you have a calm reaction, it might be more you who is arguing, thinking, and so on. So if the human being makes himself as an observation object, that's probably a good method to distinguish, let's say, authenticity, so yourself, from something else. So I think a human being wants to be himself. But if this is also lost, then I would say it's over. It's almost game over.
Yeah.
So
does it take courage to be yourself?
In a way, yes. If it takes courage if you are not knowing yourself, then of course the goal to be yourself is something unknown, and then it takes courage. And the more you know who you are, I think then a little slightly the need for courage is coming down a little bit. And that's why it's so important to know who you are. And you can only know who you are by observing yourself and so on, having ideals, and so on, taking conclusions out of your reactions to outside challenges and so on.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And is it, I guess, do you think most people know who they are?
Well, I think it's rather difficult to know who you are. And I think difficult things are not really on the agenda today. People don't like difficult things. Everything should be easy and quick. So I wouldn't say a huge amount of people are observing themselves and are very curious about themselves. Many people are, looking for quick fixes. So yes, this first step would need a lot of courage to go on this journey and say, let's see who I am, because it's a question mark. But many people do not even question who they are, because they say, oh well, you know, these are my parents and I'm living there and this is my situation. And then by, so to speak, explaining their surrounding and their life, their, so to speak, exoteric life, they think that's an explanation. And I think it helps, but it's 5%. It's not more of who they are. So you can be distracted by quite superficial explanations who you are. Now, if I would tell you, for example, and out myself about an ideal I'm carrying inside me, I would say a lot about me. So, for example, my probably biggest ideal to reach is freedom, is liberty. And I know that it's an ideal that I'm not, 100% free. That there are circumstances that do not make me free, and they really bother me. But then I try to work to find out where am I not free? And that's also an interesting research. So what I want to say is, as soon as you have ideals, then you start researching, because you want to go, maybe not reach it, because ideal is really something very ideal. It's 100% perfection. But to go into that direction is important. That's why I say to keep your personal idealism is one of the most important goals in one's life. And it doesn't matter which ideal. And because it gives you direction, it gives you curiosity and research about what is preventing me from reaching that, and so on. So now you know a lot about me when I say liberty is important for me. And then you know I have many obstacles, of course. And at the moment I have even a government who is telling me really things that he would not dare to tell me a couple of months ago. So freedom is in danger, obviously. And then, of course, the next question is how do you react on that?
How do you what?
Yeah, how do you react on these attacks on your personal freedom, all these coercion that now we have?
Yeah, it just seems it's coming from a new direction now, this year.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, attacks on freedom were coming from politics and ideology and so on, and now they are coming from health experts, if they are health experts, I don't know. So it's a very intransparent thing, but basically now the attacks on freedom comes from fear, from immediate, direct fear of your own life. They fear for their life. And that's interesting. I think you have to respect fear. That's the first step. It's a fact. You cannot fight fear. First, you respect it. And you say, oh, there's something. And how can we address that? So there are measures. For example, in a company, we started to produce masks in our own company. And that calmed people down. And that's great. So I do not want to have panic in the company, because the outcome of panic is, it's a disaster. So nobody wants that. So what is also good against panic is, again, awareness. They should fight for awareness. Because panic is not themselves. Panic is something like a demon who is occupying them. And that's why during panic they make damage. Maybe to other people, to themselves, to things. That's obvious, it's known. So you should not have panic. And I did not want to have it in the architecture or in the construction of doors. Because panic is not a goal for human being. That's why you should not make it eternal. And a building like Modelhof, who is very solidly built with stone, with good protection on the roof, with a solid granite rock on the base. You should not have a permanent installation of panic. You should fight panic. This is a big, big goal of a human being, to not panic. If you are a father of the family, you should protect your family and not be a victim of panic. And it's also a very natural goal when you have children and you educate your kids. Your principal goal is that they become independent. And independent means that they are working to support their own existence. And that's a physical element, but also a psychic element. And that's a big goal. And you should not panic as a father, but follow your ideals and, give your self-confidence in life to your kids. And I think that's a great gift you can do. Now, if you look to this society, to Western society, they are kind of reversing that goal that you have as a parents for your kids. They are making out of their citizens, they are transforming them into kids, into dependent being. And now they print money, they give money, you don't have to work for money anymore. So at the very end of this drama that is, started decades ago, we will have kids. Maybe they are 50, they are 60, they are 70 years old, but completely dependent. And that's a very sad perspective if we continue like this. And of course, we will not continue like this. And what can you do? Well, first of all, I would say be the change you want to see in the world. You start with yourself. So don't complain about that, what I just quickly described, but say, there is something going on out there. What can I do that it doesn't damage to me personally? So for example, in my case, what I did is a very strange thing. I was writing a declaration of independence. You can actually see it on my homepage, modelhof.com. There is even in English, you will find it, a declaration of sovereignty. I don't remember 100% how old I was, but something in my 50s. And in a way, I have to tell you and admit, I must be quite a ridiculous person to do a declaration of sovereignty in such a high age. But I felt it as an absolute necessary thing to do because there are so many powers, institutions, groups, governments, and wherever I am under some rules, and I had to say, hey guys, you are hurting my development as a human being, so I had to do what I did. So you can read that on modelhof.com, and I hope you have fun, and I can only invite you to do the same for yourself. It's becoming necessary because you are treated like a kid all the time. So that's just one example of what you could do. Well, you're obviously an object who should behave and who should follow orders. And I mean, we had it in the Second World War. They studied all that. There was a lot of coercion. There was physical power against people, and in Germany. And of course, you had no chance in a way to resist unless you would prepare to die. And maybe the time will come again that you must be prepared to be put into prison because you do not follow orders of people who were not able to think but who were reigned by fear. There might be this prospect. I don't fear that, but of course I'm a bit sad that it might be necessary to resist to that unbelievable power.
I mean, do you feel like we're headed in that direction?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. it's obvious. When I look back, maybe 30 years ago, when I saw that we are going in the wrong direction in our society, that laws are, increasing and increasing, you would lose awareness about all the laws that you should follow. So I realized, well, maybe I'm criminal. Without that, I know that I'm criminal, so to speak. So how can I be criminal when I don't have the awareness of being it? So yeah, I realized there were maybe like 10, the 10 commandments in the Bible, and I thought it's quite sufficient. It's very okay. I loved it. It was quite simple. And today we have, I don't know if this library would be enough to host all the rules and regulations. I don't think it would be enough. So life has become complicated. I realized that 30 years ago, and I feared and I complained and so on. And then I felt in 2004, because that was quite a personal question, I felt the necessity to say, I am now my own state. And it was a public speech in 2004. I was invited to the speech. I had no, mission to tell anybody else that I have my own state, but I was asked to have a speech about entrepreneurship and government. So I was thinking about it, and then I realized the two worlds fall apart. I am reducing costs, I'm reducing headquarter staff, and I'm increasing my productivity and so on in my company. And the government is doing the contrary. They are growing regulations, more costs, more debts, and so on. So I realized the two worlds are falling apart, and I can only live in one world. I'm very simple in that respect. So I said, I don't want to continue with you anymore. I'm now having my own state, and by the way, this Modelhof is one consequence out of this declamation of my own state. So in a way, it sounds weird that all this stuff, like I explained before, this declaration of independence, and so that this is necessary. But yes, it has become necessary because other people obviously seem to be know better what is good for me. And I refuse that because my ideal is liberty. I want to make my own mistakes. And I'm going on my way of my self-development very, very egoistically. But I realized that this way I was following, now for 60 years almost, did not harm anybody else, but brought some benefits. My company is growing. I was using this liberty that came to the eastern part of Europe after the falling down of the Berlin Wall, and so on. So we have many good things to say about my little world. So I'm not afraid vis-a-vis my own egoism, so to speak. But I doubt that the government knows what is good for me. I simply refuse their advice. So I'm not surprised that people also refuse my advice, so that's okay. So I would not give advice. I would just try to show that I am not occupied by fear, and that this is probably making the impression. Then they might be curious. Why not? Then I might, I would only answer questions. I would not talk as now I'm not talking, just out of nothing. You have questions. And then, yeah, that's interesting actually. So if they have questions, how did you do not to be so fearful in this time? Then I would start to to tell about my own life, and that's maybe the best you can do. The science of the human being is not taught. So if you don't know too much about people, then you know that you have to learn a lot. And I think one life is simply not enough to do that. It's true. So reincarnation and karma is for me as a principle in our life very important to become also a bit more relaxed. You have a question, yeah?
Yeah. So we're being told a lot that we need to choose health over economy. And what do you think about that juxtaposition?
Economics is not just an ideology or something. It's a principle of nature. If you watch nature, you should not waste. Nothing is wasted in nature. So there's an unbelievable wisdom in nature. And economics is obviously a really driving base for nature. If you work, you have a reward of the work, and you have the means to nourish yourself. Yourself is a basic element of your self-confidence and your self-esteem. Now, if this is taken, you're probably a very, very interesting victim of orders. Because if you don't have self-esteem, there is no separation of health and economy. I mean, it's completely different levels, and it's maybe part of making chaos, and people lose orientation. This is the question, health or economy? I mean, basically we support our health by working for our own existence. Now this is separated, and if you believe that nonsense, then of course you are a bit lost. If something bad happens to you, then you are supported suddenly. And this means everything that is supported and incentivized is growing. And that's an economic principle. And we should actually know much more about economics than separate it and, make different groups. Well, first of all, if you are paid by the government without that you worked for it, then we have basically a separation also. If nobody works anymore, you will not get anything with that money. So money is an illusion anyway. Money is a big illusion. Work is the real purpose in life, and to have experience and a journey of development. Now, if money is used to prevent you from working, then you in a way lost completely the context of your life. Then you are a kid maybe getting some milk from your mother, and you are not thinking, you are not independent, and you are not even a respectful person anymore. I was studying a lot about money, and the degeneration of money is also a fact in the last couple of years. We all noticed it. Now money is made out of nothing, and the illusion bubble that is created by money is growing and growing and growing. And this is of course the contrary of awareness, which would be a life goal, to know, to understand better and so on. And this journey is now interrupted by the illusion of money. And the government is now the permanent parent who is giving life support, and this actually is taking away from the people their real purpose of life, to work something, to be proud of yourself, to support yourself, to have social interaction on purposes, and not social interaction in parties, but on purposes, to achieve something, to have a goal. And this is now completely interrupted by receiving some artificial money that has absolutely no backup in work. So in a way, one should see it from a spiritual point of view. There is now a lot of work not yet being conducted compared to all the money that is printed without that there was work behind. So obviously a huge debt is accumulating at the moment, and that's not too positive. Well, at the moment, this COVID crisis, I can, of course, name some pharmaceutical industry as a beneficiary. That's too obvious, but that's why I like just to show the beneficiary. Of course, the governments are growing and growing, so they have more and more people work for the government. That's why democracy, in a way, is not the right thing anymore. So you have more people dependent on governments than the independent ones. So basically, governments are the big beneficiary. They are growing and growing, and the private sector is shrinking and shrinking. I mean, this is just an observation. It's not a political statement. It's really sad when small, like restaurants, and theaters, and hairdressers cannot operate. I think they eventually should get organized that they have a right to support their own life, which is in a way ridiculous.
It might be too late though, you know.
But I mean, what are you saying by it's too late? In a way, as long as you exist, it's never too late. So if the purpose of life is learning, you actually have sometimes, that's also a law, go through crisis so that you wake up as that might be. So you see the power relations and that you are a victim and so on, and then maybe one person decides, I refuse to be a victim anymore and I want to, support my own existence. And there are still many ways, of course, to do that. And maybe change profession, or there is even the way to go to the black market. You might be surprised, but I'm supporting, so to speak, spiritually the black market, because a market is something that arises when people interact and exchange. And in our period of time where criminalization is going on, then what else can you do? So I would understand people who maybe do services that are, when they have to close down the hairdresser shop, then the hairdressers, they change to their private apartments, and they of course give hairdressing services to private clients. So I'm spiritually fully supporting such activity, although they are illegal. So what I hereby do is I say, guys, you have no other chance than to become illegal, and I support you spiritually.
Yeah.
And I hope I'm not, being imprisoned by saying that.
I probably won't include that.
But
I think if we stand here, we got a good view. So I guess just what do you tell people when they're dealing with all these things? Like, well, what can the average person do if they're unemployed, they're at home, they're told they can't have friends, they're told everyone's an enemy to fear?
Yeah. I mean, it's basic to support your own life. So I would say, do you have any idea of what you could do to support your life? Not to be dependent on some money that eventually you never get, or you have to fill in 1,000 forms and you get the money 2 years later. Don't rely on that. I would say, really keep going in the search for your own independence. That's what I strongly would advise everybody, because that's the basis of self-confidence, and that's the basis of a functioning immune system, and that's a basis to shy away the virus or just have weak symptoms like all people who have some flu. Well, I'm fortunately I never had money because I always invested it into my own company. So, and the money was produced by this company. So nobody else has earned it more than the company, who is actually creating cash flow out of packaging. We have a very visible value-added chain. So we transform waste paper into packaging, and that's what we human beings should do. We should transform bullshit into valuable things that we can sell and support our own life. So we have a very rewarding and positive activity in my company. So I'm not doing anything else than reinvesting every Swiss franc that we earn into this company, doing so good services to people that stuff can be transported at home now that e-commerce is so en vogue. And to really support basic life principles. Over here, it's society and sociology. Then we have economy. We're just about to renew this section in economy, which, by the way, is a bit frightening because economy is basically a common law thing. So there shouldn't be too much, let's say, modern things in economy, but yes, obviously we are driving into a new, you might have heard about the new monetary theory. That's a bit frightening. So then we have biographies, history, then literature, art. I bring it back and have a sip of my cold tea.
Sure, sure.
There are the two originals of this are, I was told, in a different museum. And there was somebody who had, I don't know why, the possibility to do a gypsum copy of both and put it together again. And here it is. And I think it's so good in the Modelhof, where we try to bring people together. And that's what I call the art of social interaction. And that's really the significance for the Modelhof. So I'm not going back to the date of origin, which is in the Greek period. I'm going to the present, saying here we want to bring our people together to have a good debate and to learn from debates. That's also something I'm suffering, that we don't have debates. We have fear. And if you don't believe this, you shut up, or you are a conspiracy theory guy or so. So people are now fearing to even contribute to the debate. And the Modelhof is a building that is completely against that culture outside. That's why we need a building with thick stones, because this culture is dominating at the moment, heavily dominating. So isn't it great that these two parts were brought together again as a whole?
It's a good symbol.
Like as you said, economy and health. I mean, hey, sorry guys, we have to bring it together. I mean, it's the same thing.
You can't talk about them as opposing.
Yeah.
It's imbalanced, yeah.
So it's newly built, but it's very archaic, and that's also what you see in here in the Modelhof. We call it an archaic style. So like these columns, by the way, columns are for us the best symbol for human beings. I mean, a human being, so erect and standing upright, by the way, not like this, but like this. You can carry weight on your shoulders, on your head. And this column you would expect to carry weight, and it does. It obviously does carry the gallery where we just were walking on. So that's why we like columns, as the Greeks did and the Romans as well, because they symbolize the human being who should not complain that it has to carry something, but who is, actually that's his purpose. That's how he's constructed, to carry something. So please, in the Modelhof, don't complain, but be happy that you have to carry and carry something. And that's also the power you do. You start a family, for example. You carry responsibility and so on. And that's a great thing. That's how the human being is constructed for. So no reason to complain.
Yeah, so there's definitely been a bit of a discouragement of that.
Yeah. We have all reason to be optimistic, to face challenges, because the bad news, so to speak, is that learning happens very often through pain, through bad experience. And we should not, prevent others from bad experience. We should, have the courage to to go through a certain pain, don't take painkillers. Pain really tells you something and it enforces learning. Even if we feel bored or something is boring around ourselves, we can actually switch off this surrounding and look inside. Because, for example, if you have a certain feeling, this is not in your full consciousness unless you make it conscious. Thinking, however, needs your full consciousness, otherwise the result of your thinking is very dubious. And then you have also your will. If you want something, it is really funny to do some research why you want what you want, because that is not so obvious and clear, except eating when you are hungry. And so you have your permanent research possibility, so you don't need entertainment, you don't have to look and watch movies and Netflix 4 hours every day, you don't have to have screen presence time for 5 hours, 8 hours a day. You really have yourself with you, and that's great.
What if you're uncomfortable with yourself?
Yeah, then the first thing is, why am I uncomfortable? And what do I have to do to come to a comfortable state again? So being uncomfortable is really the knock on the door to wake up and say, what is the reason? And there might be thousands of reasons, as you might know, and then that's really interesting to answer that question. But please let the question come up, and that's probably one wisdom I found in my life, that the questions, the right questions, are much more important than the answers. So I want to encourage people, please come to questions and don't be so impatient to wait for the answer. It might be years actually until the right answer comes to your original question. Well, you are the regisseur.
So how do we grow to understand ourselves?
Well, when you start to research yourself, you are quite puzzled in a way how many questions come up. And that's really the beginning of the journey. And the longer you are in this journey, the more self-confident you get, because after a couple of days you're still alive, and then you do research. Nowadays it's so wonderful. You can have your university at home. you have YouTube, you have Google, you have all the means to really get to know how. You can type your question and maybe find some answers. Then of course you find so many answers that you have to make a selection. So you really can start now, and that's the good news. And it needs time and it needs persistence. All these known virtues that remain the same virtues all the time: patience, curiosity. And if you have all these ingredients, there is no fear needed for your life and not to reach your purpose. But working on, how. The next question is, how do you get virtues? So obviously institutions do not help you. But as really we have this help, this internet nowadays, you can get to answers if you have questions. But the problem actually today is people don't even have questions, and they are not questioning. They're just following. That you start asking questions really starts your awareness. And that's maybe the birth moment. And you see kids. Everybody should have kids. They have questions and questions. And I think that's great.
Yeah, does it take courage and bravery to be yourself?
Well, obviously, we were talking about virtues, and that's the bad news. You really need virtues to start your life and your journey into more and more awareness and understanding. And yes, I would say you need all of them. That's really the bad news. So you need courage, you need patience, you need persistence, and all that. So these are obviously things that are not supported and are not incentivized exactly today. Nowadays you need much more psychic power than physical power. Again, by the way, it shows that we have actually the wrong focus by focusing on physical health and absolutely shutting out the psychic part of the human being. You see, we don't have this muscle battle anymore. We have the battle of arguments, of virtues, persistence, and all this stuff. So yes, you should work on this, and that's a really interesting but not an easy journey, and that it was never meant to be easy. So if you think this, I think you actually reached the wrong address. On planet Earth, things are not made easy. They are here to make it a bit more difficult and more resistance. And I would say, yes, here we are. Welcome on Earth.
And could we just revisit that point that sometimes it takes the pain and the suffering to bring the understanding?
Yes, there is. If you like biographies, you come across so many cases where people had their wake-up moment. I mean, it could have been a very dramatic thing. Somebody died that you loved so much. You had an accident or whatever. And then this life had the turning point. And this seems to work because it happens so many times to so many people. The good news is it shouldn't be so drastic. If you learn in the first, or if you open the door at the first knock knock, you probably don't have an accident and probably you are not terminally ill. So the first encounter that you should learn something comes very nice, but obviously sometimes too nice. So you do not wake up, you do not realize that this question you should solve. Now if you didn't, then the next time the knock knock comes maybe by exploding the door away. And, but you are still not hurt, and then you should do something and be aware of what's going on and what you should learn. And if you don't, then things are escalating basically. And that's just a rule of our life. And if we don't have the power to have such dramatic incidents in our life, we better learn earlier, so we have enough time and things are more peaceful and quiet. But if we don't, and we are obviously, all of us are still far away from the complete awareness, then this rule of escalation applies. So there might be some pain, and so my advice is don't complain about the pain. It's just a way to wake you up and to give you a certain direction and at least a reflection about what's happening. Now, our policy is actually trying to prevent pain, and I think that's a good measure to actually prevent people from learning. So we have, distributed money immediately because it's not your fault, it's not your fault, it's not your fault. You are educated to a victim. And this is the opposite of being a human being. A human being is acting, has given two hands, and hands represent action. So let's use what we have been given. Dash!
And if we reject ourselves, what happens?
Oh my God, I mean, yeah, then the escalation comes, but there are so many possibilities to wake up and to change our directions. I think that's called grace, and we all were beneficiary of some grace in our life, maybe in the next life.
What qualities do we need to overcome our fears?
Yeah, you can't just say be calm if you don't. If you are not, then you are not. I think the first step is that you recognize the fear. So that's what I would call, do search for your motivation to do something, to feel something, to think something. And if you see the motivation and you realize that there is a common motivator which is called fear, then I would say you made probably the most important first step in then asking, where does the fear come? Why am I fearful? And so on. And then this journey, this awareness journey, this conscious journey actually has started. You gotta do the first step, and that is identifying the causes, the reasons why you do what you do. You know, people are so prepared to be aggravated in any moment, but the big goal should be have the so-called permanent presence of spirit. But I think there is a special English term for it. You know, in German we say Geistesgegenwart. So the permanent presence of your consciousness, of your awareness, so that you can respond immediately with the right words to a challenge that is coming from outside. And it's really interesting. We all are so proud of us when we had such a moment. And I'm sure we all had such a moment where we gave exactly the right answer to the question. It couldn't have been the better one. It's this one. And there is a lot of work behind it. Maybe the first time it's like a gift. And you are, I said exactly what I should have said. And it's received like a gift. You cannot fully explain why it happened. And then this should start your engine to work on your permanent presence of spirit, so that you more and more often have the right answer to the questions that are so surprisingly coming from outside. And this is a long journey. That's the bad news. But in the good news, all people, even the Chinese, wish each other a long life. Why shouldn't we use the long life that we are given to us right now, with an average life expectancy of 80 and something, to do that journey and have more and more the good reaction, the inspiring reaction, the motivating reaction from a question that is coming from you or anybody else surrounding you. Well, we are here to learn. It's obvious. There are so many miracles. There are so many questions. And you see this with the kids. The kids have many questions, and they have so many questions that you are sometimes, as a father, a bit overwhelmed by it sometimes, so you need patience, but be happy when they have questions, and we should never destroy it, and learn from the kids that we should have questions as well. You know, just by the fact that there are kids and adults doesn't mean adults don't have questions, because the kids have so many. We should actually have more and more questions, and I think that the good or the bad news, take it as you want, is this life is simply not enough to answer all of them, but keep producing them, keep confronting your surrounding by it, keep Googling your questions, and you will get many, many answers. You will have a very interesting life, you will have a very interesting marriage, because even after 36 years, as in our case, you have many, many things to discuss, because there are more questions than answers. So a lifetime will not be enough to answer all of it. The good start again is that you are a miracle to yourself. So this is a huge step when you, so to speak, go outside of yourself on purpose and watch yourself. So that you transform you as a subject into an object. Because for me, objectivity was always a goal. And then I started to suffer that I only have one perspective. I realized that from a certain angle, a cup is looking like this, and from the other angle, it suddenly has a holder. And then I said, how can I, as a subject, work on objectivity? And that's only possible, from my experience, to make, first of all, myself, transform myself into an object of observation, and secondly, start to change perspectives. And these are two methods that make life unbelievably interesting. So we should be very, very modest when we have an opinion, that an opinion is just a perspective, but the whole could bring much more, let's say, new information. So I would always defer the judgment into the future. So no early judgment. Wait until you have positioned all the perspectives that you can possibly have, and continue to make yourself as an observation object, and then you do not need a quick judgment. No early judgment is one of my principles of life. That's a very nice subject. I think this beginning could be a very good end.
Yeah.
Very good idea.